Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, The Muppets, Sesame Street, Arthur, The Nightmare Before Christmas, Spirited Away, Bill Nye the Science Guy, and literally all the Pixar movies. What do these have in common? They're all aimed at children. These shows are remembered fondly by the people who grew up watching them, and for good reason. Some of them were known for dealing with tougher topics like death, divorce and disaster relief, someone you know getting into terminal illness, and in some cases they just taught you things like science or how to read and count. And if they weren't meant to be educational, they mostly provided an imaginative story with great characters that got children's attention. So, and if they were lucky, they got to see Kermit the Frog make that face. Look at that. These shows, movies, and or books had a quality to them that you wouldn't really find, or had a special quality to them that really helped define what they were and what they were to the people who watched them. Now, and then there are things like the Emoji Movie, the Grinch, or the Dr. Seuss remake, to be more specific. Those other movies rebooting CG characters from decades ago, and Minions. Those things get the excuse because they're just for kids. When like the Pixar movies and all the things I've mentioned before put real effort into creating a story and an environment that really stimulated a child's imagination and made them think or made them feel like a certain way. They're all remembered well, and usually the things I mentioned before, they're either quickly forgotten in the mind of the child who just saw them because they were so bland, or they're remembered for being terrible. It's usually the second one. The fact that it's for children doesn't really make it much of an excuse when all forms of children's, usually the excuse is for those movies, shows, and in some cases books, is that it's just for kids. When those things that are just for kids can have a bigger impact, and people can't really appreciate what a good children's show can do until they've experienced a bad one. Take a show like Sesame Street, a show that has been educating children since the late 60s and is still educating them today, and is adapting the show, the story, and characters to teach children about things that they wouldn't have to learn about back then. Like, they have recently added a new puppet with autism named Julia that is used to effectively teach children about how children with autism usually act, and that they're not, and that they just think differently, and using it as an efficient way to explain how it works. Now, shows like this are good because usually parents have just put their children in front of the TV and have them watch things as long as it keeps them quiet. When researching what the impact of children's media was on the minds of children, all I could really get was specific shows, like what Sesame Street did or what Mr. Rogers did. The point I'm making is kids deserve thought-provoking movies, shows, and books. Things that can teach them things without boring them to death. Things that challenge them and teach them really dark subjects, but in a way they can understand. That scare them a little, make them laugh, but mainly just to inspire them and make them feel something that they didn't feel before they watched. Because we don't need an obnoxious voice to tell them what happens, because they can understand it on their own if it's presented in a way that they can. Or we don't need Sonic telling you that Eggman's attacking him. We know, we can see it. And what kids watch today will impact their future. So, what do we learn?